All right. Well, hey there, everyone. My name is Ronith. I'm a product management fellow with the city of Boston. And head over to Manasa.
Hi everyone, I'm Manasa. I'm also a product management fellow along with Ronith this summer.
And here to talk to you guys about Clicks to Civic Services, advancing Boston's web analytics strategy, and the work that we did to build upon the already great stuff Boston does. To start with the number 2.07 million is the number of page visits that Google Analytics logged for Boston.gov in 1 month, the month of July 2024. To give some context, Boston has 700,000 residents approximately. And so we clearly see that one product that's operated by the city of Boston is already heavily used. And this is just one of already the many products city of Boston offers.
So this summer we came in as product management fellows for the Boston Digital Services and the data and analytics teams. These teams basically work to improve user experience for all of Boston residents through the digital services that they provide, and they help build a more effective government. So going in, this was the question that we had in mind. How might we leverage our analytics capabilities to gain more insight into how Boston residents use these digital services? And this was the problem space that we encountered as fellows this summer. So we noticed that there were a lot of unexplored analytics opportunities. What this meant was there were a large number of products built out by the city of Boston that did not have any analytics associated with them. So this was an untapped opportunity. Next, there was insufficient documentation for the analytics properties that already did exist. So this meant that often work that got done by people many years ago did not have anyone to keep up with it and take it forward into the next iteration. And finally, there was space for creating a long-term strategy. So what do we have now? What do we want? And how do we get there? And this was something that we could work on.
Over our 10-week fellowship, we had our work cut out for ourselves. We took stock of the work that Boston already done and found that there was a few pages on the city of Boston's products that did not already have Google Analytics. So we immediately added Google Analytics to those pages. We also realized that some of the changes that have happened over the last few years with Google Analytics transition to Google Analytics 4 meant that we need to establish new best practices and guidelines for web analytics so that City of Boston could do a better job of measuring the user engagement with their platform. We also created a roadmap for future usage and improvements so that the work that we've begun in our 10-week fellowship can continue forth. We did some initial explorations of the user interactions on the open data portal, and then also conducted some comparator research with other cities like New York City, San Francisco, and Seattle to see what other features and aspects might we want to incorporate with the Boston Open Data Portal going forth.
So diving a bit deeper into the work that we did, first we had to tackle the best practices that currently exist for Google Analytics. As Ronit mentioned, there was a recent shift to a new version of Google Analytics, which meant we had to take stock of what was going on. First, we did this by assessing the needs of the different teams that interacted with these web products. So say you had a form-based page, like you were a team that's responsible for registering marriages. The way you interact with your citizens through your forms is significantly different from the way you would interact with your citizens if you were providing information on like a page that had information about garbage collection and different details that people access. Next, we had to take stock of what was going on with Google Analytics, and we found out that there were different levels of customization that they offer. So you could use things from default, recommended, and then custom events, which were different levels that we could pick and choose from and see what fit our use case. And finally, we understood that there was a need to promote reuse across various city properties. What this meant was that we wanted to reduce work for the city going ahead and build upon the work we did by allowing it to be flexible and to be reused in the future. So given that we understood the best practices that were going on, how do we map these to a roadmap in the future? So given that we assessed needs by talking to different stakeholders and teams, we realized that there was a need to prioritize different kinds of metrics for different teams. And secondly, learning that there were different levels of customization that were available to us through Google Analytics itself. We understood that in most cases, the baseline features that were available fit those needs very well. There was not a high need for customization, as we'd gone in hoping to find. And finally, understanding that we wanted to promote reuse in these scenarios meant that we could use something called a Google Tag Manager to track all our events that allowed us to capture these things in one location and allowed teams to access the work that's been done by other people.
One of my favorite parts during this fellowship was being able to dig through the data that Google Analytics has collected. So with the Open Data Portal, we initialized Google Analytics in June 20th of 2024. And with the 2 months of data that we had collected up to that point, I was able to download information from Google Analytics about the number of users and the number of downloads among the data sets that we had, and see the correlation that existed between the number of users visiting particular page titles and the number of downloads we see on there. And so you immediately see that there's a few data sets that saw the most amount of users, the approved building permits, the property assessment, the crime incident reports, and the employee earnings report. But what was interesting is that even among these highly visited web pages, there was 2 data sets that were downloaded more often than you would expect for the number of visitors on that site, and that was the property assessment and crime incident reports. So in those particular data sets, users not only visit that web page, but would download a CSV file and parse through that information for something more specific that they couldn't necessarily do easily on the app itself. And it indicates a higher level of usage and some more critical data sets that folks outside of the city of Boston were using. And so we saw that for these 2 data sets, property assessment and crime incident reports, saw that higher download rate, and would be areas to prioritize quality and making sure updates are given on a timely manner to make sure that other users are getting the critical information they need. The other thing that was interesting, as I mentioned earlier, was the 2.07 million page visits. So this is looking at in August thus far. So August, up till August 12th, we had 940,000 session starts on the web pages. And then to be able to track user journeys as they went to the boston.gov webpage and seeing what pages were the most visited and most used. And what was interesting in doing that is that parking was Boston residents' highest visit pages, specifically disputing and appealing parking tickets. And so users truly value that ability among their Boston website. And that's really another area to make sure that users are able to get quality information for them. Some of the research I did looking at New York City, Seattle, and San Francisco showed that Boston does a good job in providing current data sets over a widespread number of crucial city services. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there's a few data sets that people use more often than others. Boston has a good backend system of implementing automatic data uploads so that it isn't one person who's responsible for emailing other partner agencies and getting that data uploaded manually. There's an automatic way of using Civic to make those uploads. The things that Boston might want to consider going forth would be publishing web analytics information. So some of the stuff that we just covered early in our presentation, other cities are further along in their web analytics strategies and have been able to publish that on their open data portals. Something I found interesting in other open data portals was the more fun-oriented data sets. The San Francisco has a data set that lists out film locations for places that were used in some scene of movies. New York City has squirrel sightings done in Central Park, categorized by like squirrel type, squirrel fur color. There might be an opportunity for Boston, given its historical importance being founded in 1630, to like include some of those key location points where American history is played out, and uploading that information. And then the final thing I'll leave is there's always room for improvement for increasing community engagement, for making sure that this open data portal is more accessible to folks who might not be nerds and folks who might not be the first users who are looking for an open data portal, but might have some interesting contribution, might be interested in the data that we publish. And so some of the next steps I would be encouraging Boston after a fellowship would be to identify the most essential digital services based on user engagement. So build upon the work that we've already done among our initial user explorations so that there's a level of priority among if a system is down, what are the web pages that need to get up first and what are the pieces of information residents are most interested in for. The second piece would be how can we do targeted outreach for user segments that have low engagement on our platform? And then the third piece would be building a more comprehensive analytics strategy that goes beyond these first steps that we've taken with Google Analytics. And one of those was I had the opportunity to go on a call with OpenGov, who runs our open data portal, and talking about some of the features that they might release to improve the user experience and how some of that information can be collected to further improve upon Boston's products.
So this finally brings us to what we learned over the summer is that analytics increases service quality. And as a government, it isn't enough just to put out our digital services, but also it is very important to track their usage over time. And this is a crucial source of feedback and a way that your citizens tell you how they're accessing your services. So combining analytics along with deeper, more focused user research can actually offer us insights into how the citizen experience of a city actually is. And for me personally, working in government meant working with deeply committed and talented people who we're incredibly grateful for. Ronith, if you want to just move to our. And we would like to say a really big thank you to our team members at the City of Boston, Julia, Anna, Steph, Stella, and James, and the other people on the digital team too. And all of the members at Coding It Forward, Yang, Cassie, and Ariana, without whom we would not have been able to do this over the summer. So thank you, everyone. We're now open to taking any questions.
Great job. Wonderful presentation. I was curious about, so you mentioned that there's two websites that had a higher proportion of downloads to visits. Prior to starting your project, did you or maybe the team have an idea of maybe websites that they felt needed improvement, or was this sort of like a surprise find in your work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So this information, I think, are you referring to this graph I was talking about or the user pathway exploration?
This slide.
Yeah, so this one was with our the open data portal. And open data portal prior to the fellowship was not collecting any analytics because that portion of our Boston.gov website is run by a third party, OpenGov, from a relationship we established back in 2016. It's the nature of like how technical work and new work is. Like it was started through a grant, and that grant established relationship with the third party. So prior to that, there was some information that was displayed on the website, but working with that partner with OpenGov, we had to first establish a relationship to then collect some of this information. We didn't have a sense of what data sets were the most downloaded. On the website, you can go to data.boston.gov and see for yourself which data sets are the most visited, but not the most downloaded. So we didn't have that information for the fellowship.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. Happy to take any other questions folks might have. If not, we wrote ourselves some questions in case we were going to have some awkward silence. And I'm happy to answer the first one, Manasa, and then you can answer and then the ones. If I had another week with the fellowship, one of the things that I found interesting, Manasa covered this a little bit with the Google Tag Manager, is I want to know what users are searching for in the Open Data Portal. So we have a text box within the Open Data Portal, but there'd be more work to connect that text box HTML input with Google Analytics tracking just to see, are we able to provide data that users are actually searching for, or are people just looking at data sets that they might not be the most interested in, but are what's available?
I'm happy to answer the same thing, just to talk about what I would do if I had another week. Um, so we thought a lot about how to leave our project in a state that makes more sense for the team to take it up after we're gone. And one component of that would be to leave a more detailed training video, because there were like subtler aspects of setting up Google Analytics in the ways that we need and want that are hard to capture in just written documentation alone. So that's been something we've been considering. Yeah.
Seems like we have like 7 seconds. Thank you guys for coming out to our presentation.
Thanks, everyone.